Wilmington is just a magnet. You know, anyone who ever lives here loves it.
Wilmington is the port city.
Beautiful little town.
A magical place.
There's a lot of beauty here in this old town.
A big part of this area is the beauty.
It's pretty close to paradise if you appreciate it.
At the start of the 20th century, Wilmington was the most populous city in North Carolina. The banks along Wall Street were teeming with commerce. Wilmington was headquarters of the Atlantic coastline, a major railroad of the region. Agricultural areas still surrounded the city, and the local economy was driven by family businesses. During the First World War, the city emerged as an ideal location for shipbuilding. In the 1930s, along with the rest of the nation, Wilmington endured the Depression. Then came World War II. Wartime activities in Wilmington effectively transformed the community.
All these soldiers went to Camp Davis, and this was the only place that they could go find any recreation or any restaurant or anything to eat.
Wilmington was a regular destination for soldiers seeking to enjoy weekend leave at local restaurants, theaters, USOs, and the beaches.
A lot of the girls here married Camp Davis men.
Some girls married soldiers, others joined the military. Nearby Camp Davis became a Women's Air Force Service Pilot or WASP training field.
World War II dominated our lives as children.
When an air raid came, you just had to be inside, all the windows closed and all the shades then were pulled down.
Our cafeteria was in the basement of the school, and we would go there as a bomb shelter.
And I was sent to the store to get a half dozen of eggs that came in a brown paper bag. And in the middle of the day, an air raid sounded. So needless to say, when the eggs got home, they were scrambled.
During World War II, Wilmington's industrial potential as a shipbuilding community was fully realized.
People flocked into Wilmington by thousands.
After World War II ended, wartime housing was converted into permanent homes and public housing. Wartime jobs vanished, and Wilmington's population declined. But for those who stayed, Wilmington provided a vibrant downtown.
Everything was downtown. There were no malls, no shopping malls. You came downtown to do everything.
We used to dress up to go downtown.
She used to invite the grandchildren on outings to go to movies in downtown Wilmington.
Used to dress up to go shopping at Belk's at 2nd and Chestnut.
The second blow to Wilmington's economy came in 1955 when the Atlantic Coastline Railroad announced plans to relocate their headquarters. It destabilized the area's economy. After all, the railroad had been the region's primary employer for much of the century. In response, local leaders organized to form the Committee of 100 with the mission of recruiting new employers to the Lower Cape Fear. Local leaders continue to play this role today as the Wilmington Industrial Development Committee. 20th century changes took their toll on Wilmington. After the port, then the railroad left downtown, and later department stores moved to the new mall, downtown's economy declined. took a concerted community effort to reclaim what became the Wilmington Historic District, starting with Downtown Area Revitalization Effort, or DARE, in 1977, and continuing today with Wilmington Downtown.
Economic development downtown wouldn't exist without a recognition and an appreciation for our architecture and our history.
As the century wore on, tourism became more important to Wilmington.
I love the coast and be around the water.
The ocean is in me.
The beach.
You have the beach very close by, beautiful beach.
When I say beach, I don't have to say anything else after I say beaches.
Beaches have been an escape for residents and an attraction for tourists since modern transportation made them readily accessible. Wrightsville Beach grew from a tent community to resort establishments, luxury hotels, and Lumina. Racially segregated beaches led African Americans to establish their own beach communities. Shell Island was developed during the 1920s at the northern end of Wrightsville Beach. Seabreeze, an African American resort community, opened in the vicinity of Carolina Beach in 1922. Carolina Beach, which claims to be the birthplace of the shag, was a social hotspot in the 1940s and 50s. While these beaches changed with the century, they remain places for locals and tourists to surf, sunbathe, and enjoy. 20th Century Wilmington also became home to an increasing number of festivals. The first Azalea Festival was held in 1948. Exceeded planners' expectations, and they established the festival as an annual event. An interstate highway made it easier for tourists to visit historic downtown.
We screamed and hollered for an interstate connection until we got it in 1990.
It's a very small town, right? But the people here do take pride in having a big heart, seriously.
A good place to live, a nice place to visit.
Well, I always tell them, coming to God's country when you come to Wilmington.
But you'll want to come back.
Life has always been so idyllic in Wilmington. For much of the century, the town was segregated.
There was a white and there was a black Wilmington.
And I can remember very clearly standing there watching my grandmother's car drive by with my grandmother in the driver's seat and Martha in the back seat, but white ladies did not allow their black maids to sit in the front seat with them, and thinking, why? That's so unfair.
There seemed to be a kind of camaraderie with different people in the neighborhood, regardless to whether they were white or black. You know, you had your own special relationships that you built yourselves. On the street, you may not speak, but you would talk to each other or spend time with each other away from the public.
Segregation was most prominent in the schools. Schools were segregated well into the 20th century. Even many years after the Supreme Court ruled that segregated schools were unconstitutional, Wilmington schools were not integrated. Then in 1968, Williston High School, the pride of the African American community, was closed.
Well, you can imagine what a shock this was to those of us who were so proud of the school, who felt that we had the greatest school under the sun, to know that it would be no more.
School integration was accompanied by neighborhood tension, public protests, and violence.
Went to school on across the street in Robert Strange Park. They had the National Guard in camp.
Race relations sank to new lows. By the last decade of the century, things had changed.
I mean, we certainly have a long way to go, but race relations have improved dramatically.
This place has changed, and it has changed in a positive way.
I think a real determination, real desire on the part of both blacks and whites in Wilmington to make this thing work.
Wilmington's population has grown and become more diverse.
So we've had a lot of influx of new ideas and new people.
Everybody wants to live here.
I think it's growing too big, but I guess that's progress.
Well, I really don't know how many more people we can hold.
You can't put up gates on 40 and 17 and say enough is enough.
Wilmington has been discovered. Now what we do with that is our responsibility to make sure it's done appropriately.
Growth may threaten Wilmington's greatest attributes, its rare and beautiful natural areas.
I wish I remembered all the green things we used to have.
She said Wilmington's growing so fast in 20 years it's going to be hard asphalt and concrete. Said you're going to have to go to a museum to see a tree.
There's certain things you do have to preserve.
While we can do something about it now, and it would be good, it's not too late.
After a century of change, Wilmington is a thriving community that people are proud to call home.
I love Wilmington.
I came in, I fall in love.
This is home.
The Cape Fear River courses through my veins.
Throughout the 20th century, powerful winds of change and erosion have ripped the sands from the shore. Yet always, a season of gentler waves has returned. What will next century hold?